guys, welcome to another Travelscope on this Travel Tuesday. I'm Dayvee Sutton at Dayvee Sutton on all social media, joined by my co-host Lori McBrown at Lori McBrown on all social media. How are you doing this week, Lori?
Fabulous, ridiculously amazing. How about you?
I'm doing ridiculously amazing. I love that you say that every single time.
It's my mantra.
Yeah, your mantra, and you do it so well. It's one of those sayings that, like, it just resonates. Like, you know exactly what you mean when you say ridiculously amazing. How can you not have that time? And this week we are joined by one of our mutual friends, Russell.
All right, Dayvee, we're losing you, honey.
Okay.
There.
Yeah, am I good?
Yeah, you're back now.
Okay, Russell.
Yeah.
Okay, welcome, Russell.
Happy to be here. This is pretty cool. First time I've ever been on something like this. So
yeah,
it's
we're
exciting.
happy to have you.
Thanks.
So we met Russell, Lori and I met Russell at a conference last year, and he has this really cool book, How to Spin the World Round. And it's a really good kind of like, if you want to know how those people just travel the world, travel it without being super ridiculously wealthy, Russell kind of lays it out really, really simply in your book. Tell us more about that.
Thanks. Yeah, well, so basically I did the trial and error that a lot of people do, kind of just stopped everything and took a trip around the world. I always kind of had this dream to just go in one direction all the way around the world, and I had an opportunity to manifest it by getting into some conference in South Korea, and I was like, if I'm going to go a quarter of the way around the world, I might as well just keep going. And then I just kind of did all this research about, what's the cheapest way to do it, and I found couch surfing and started getting a hold of friends on Facebook that lived around the world, and kind of lined up places where I could stay for free instead of staying in hotels and staying in hostels. And then also staying with locals was kind of the bonus that went with that, because then I could get the local scoop and then therefore save more money in the local places, and then also see what's cool in terms of what the locals think is cool instead of what the tourists think is cool. And then I was using mostly Kayak to book my flights, and then like within the first couple of cities I found Skyscanner, which is a site that helps you book one-way flights super cheaply by showing you the prices fluctuating over time. And so took those pieces of the technology, and then also, I've been into mindfulness and meditation and the law of attraction. I don't really like to call it the law of attraction, but kind of just this idea of you create your reality with your thoughts. And when I was traveling, it's easy to be really grateful and happy and things, but then sometimes it's also easy to like get upset. Things don't go your way. But I was finding that whenever I was getting upset, then things were starting to tumble out of control. But if I would sort of control my mind to be happy and focus on what was good, then things would just keep getting better and better. And so I kind of wrapped up that philosophy and methodology and put it into that book, and then released that last year. And I'm currently actually working on a memoir of my trip, which is like the personal story, the guys Eat, Pray, Love version. But until then, you have the book so you can kind of create your own Eat, Pray, Love.
I love how nonchalantly you say that. Like, I just put everything on hold and decided to travel the world. Was it really that easy for you personally? Were you one of those kind of people, or was this a huge undertaking?
Well, actually, it was kind of like the universe set it up for me. I told you about that conference, which was something I was related to this project I was working on for this silent disco, which is this other thing I've been working on. It's like an entertainment thing where everybody's wearing headphones at a party. And so a friend of mine in Austin was like telling me about this conference about unique musical interfaces and musical instruments. And he said it's like this academic conference, so you can write a paper about it. And so he said, you should write about the silent disco, and then also write about the meditation stuff, which I also like write guided meditations and use these headphones to like deliver this technology that like synchronizes your brain waves. So all this stuff sounded really interesting. And he's like, why don't you write this paper and submit it to this conference? And I blew him off. But then like the day the papers were due, he called me up and he's like, did you write that paper? I'm like, no. And he's like, well, it's fine because they extended the deadline by 2 days. And I had the 2 days free. So I wrote the paper, and then I started looking at the calendar, and the lease on my house that I was renting in Austin was expiring like at the same time. And then I had I had a friend that had room in his garage to store my stuff. And so all these sort of things just started to like confluence together. And it was like, this is your opportunity to do this. And I saw the opportunity and took it.
So I love your book. You kind of go through things. Well, first I want to start. You right off the back, you go into these quotes, and you have these quotes. I'm going to pull the first one, but I want to ask you about the inspiration of like how you pull these quotes. But the world is a book, and those who do not travel read only a page. What kind of made you kind of lead each chapter with these quotes?
I'm really like inspired by people that can eloquently formulate these big, vast ideas in short sentences. And so I just kind of went through and found ones. I had to find ones, of course, that were, public domain. You know, when you write a book, you can't like plagiarize anything in the last 50 years. So most of those quotes are really old, but they're all related to travel, and they're all related to the different elements of traveling. And that's pretty much mostly what most of my Twitter feed is. I post like 2 of those a day from different people, and they're all like very inspiring. And it's really cool when you can just like have these big ideas and just distill them down to a few words, and they inspire me a lot, and they're kind of like mantras too.
I will tell you, if I ever say something profound, you can use it. You have free use to use it.
Thank you. Thank you, Dayvee.
Put it at any word that I say that is worth putting in parentheses, go ahead and use that. I think when we talk about travelers, there's a language amongst travelers. Once you get your passport stamped, there's something that is unsaid, but we all kind of know. And that's what you, I guess, try to translate in parts of this book, kind of like when you, through couch surfing and the different relationships that you meet you kind of curated while you were on the road, it seemed easy to you because you were a traveler and those people understood travelers. Is that kind of what you experienced?
Yeah, I think there is definitely a mindset to travel, because a lot of like your average Americans or whatever, I tell them about this sort of trip, and they are kind of, either afraid for me, or they don't want to meet people and get out of their shell. So I think it is kind of a different way of traveling. Like some people, they want to go to Jamaica and then spend the whole week just sitting on the island resort and not leaving the resort. And that's not really what this kind of travel is about. It's really about the getting into the culture and the local culture and meeting locals and seeing like how other people live. Instead of like bringing America to these other countries, I'm bringing myself in there. And with that, there is some vulnerability of becoming the foreigner and sort of, leaving yourself out there. But I think that, if you go along with that, the mindfulness practice and sort of like, being aware but not afraid, then, you can go a long way. And then embracing when things don't go wrong, because like most of the stories in my memoir are cases that, they're embarrassing, or they're things that, were not really going right, or at the time I kind of maybe even might have gotten upset about, but then looking back, those are the stories that I always tell my friends, and those are the things that everybody wants to hear. So, it's kind of just being aware of that and living that kind of travel. And when I went, I set like my 2 primary intentions were very simple: nature and culture. So the nature element was, waterfalls are my favorite, places, and beaches and sunshine and just getting out there. And then culture, it wasn't like the changing of the guard or, the Tower Bridge or whatever is like the tourist things. It was like literally just being with a local and saying, what are you doing tonight? Like, what would you be doing tonight if I weren't here? What's going on in this town? Go see live music, or go to the park, or go to the grocery store, let's go out to eat, different things that are just like, what's a normal day in the life. And when I did couch surfing, I also hosted a lot in Austin before I went. And that was a lot of fun because it was like the reverse scenario. And I was kind of becoming a tourist in my hometown because people from around the world would come stay with me. And then it would kind of get me off the couch to go and like explore my hometown and see it in a new light. When you show someone, something that seems mundane to you, and you see their eyes light up, it kind of gives you a good feeling. And then you realize that, hey, this is a cool place to live too. So on both sides of the coin, I think this is a really awesome way to travel.
We have someone in our forum who follows you on Twitter, or you follow them, Plan and Adventure. So he gives you a shout out, Russell. But you do speak a lot about, so kind of this kind of idea of the way that you travel. A lot of people don't like to, they kind of like say that they don't make hardcore plans when they travel. They move from one spot, and when that spot feels good enough, then they move to the next one. But you do also speak a lot about traveling with intention, and having goals so that you can have takeaways from each spot.
Yeah, I would say set a lot of intentions, but not as many expectations. And I think you can do you have to find a balance. I mean, sometimes if you plan too much, then you're not really giving an opportunity for that magic to happen, because you've already set your itinerary very firm, and so there's only so much that can happen. And those people that are like, I'm just going to go here and leave it open, then you leave yourself more opportunity. But then sometimes, it just becomes mundane staying in the same place. So there's a balance. But when I booked my trip, like, I had no idea when I was coming back. It was just a series of one ways, and I was generally staying ahead of myself like a couple months, because that's when the prices dip usually on flights. If you book like 6 to 8 weeks in advance, you get the cheapest flights, and that was kind of important to me. And then when I started getting into Europe, I didn't give myself as much time. And actually, I didn't give myself enough time in some of the places, because I was getting there and spending only like, 2 days to a week, and it was moving by so quickly. And I was like, oh, I should have seen this, and this, or this, different things, or days where I had to just take a rest and do nothing. But I was kind of rationalizing that because like Europe's pretty expensive. Like when I was in Asia, you can live for $10 a day in Asia, and so that's cheaper than living here. And so I would spend more time in those countries, like Philippines, Vietnam, Thailand, and India were super cheap. And so you could spend a lot of time there. But then getting over to Europe, it was getting a lot more expensive. So I wasn't really giving myself enough time to do that. So if I had it over again, I might have actually extended it a little bit longer.
Do you consider yourself a pro traveler?
Pro traveler? Well, that word professional is kind of a loaded word, because it implies I'm like making money, I guess. And I've been saving a lot of money, but I still haven't quite gotten the hang of monetizing and doing all these things that I get, like 50 emails a day from everyone that wants to teach me how to monetize my blogs and stuff like that. But I'm kind of headed in that direction. I guess I have a book out and it's selling, so I guess I'm professional. I would consider myself
there's a start.
Yeah, definitely. I would consider myself a travel expert, though, for sure. Like, definitely confidently can consult and like show people, like all my friends will like contact me about like, how do I do this or this? And I'm like showing them these like new ways to look at it. And they're really usually impressed by, I didn't even think to do this and just saving people money, because it's just like a mindset. I'm very analytical. I have a degree in information science, and I'm a software developer. And so the way my mind thinks is often very analytical, but then I also have the balance with like, kind of like the metaphysical and meditation and softer. So it's like about balance, I guess, for me. I'm a Gemini, so it's like the two sides always.
If you're just joining us, we're chatting with Russell Dobda, right? Did I say your name right? That's what I wanted to confirm. Dobda?
Yeah, Dobda, you got it.
And he has this book, How to Spin the World Around. And then with cheap travel, technology, and mindfulness. And it's a real easy read, but loaded with lots of information. I have a question that came from somebody on Twitter that said, what if you're shy? How do you kind of overcome that?
Well, like force yourself, I guess, to be in the situations. I think that if you do, couch surfing, for example, it's actually easier if you're shy. Sometimes, I spent a couple nights in hostels, for example, and when I was going to hostels, well, first of all, everybody's a traveler in a hostel, so you're not meeting locals. But then also I would go down to the hostel bar, and it would just be, 20 people looking in their cell phones, and like trying to like start conversations could be awkward. But if you sign up for couch surfing and you place yourself into the home of a local, then, you're having that one-on-one conversation. And for me, I guess like I do well in like one-on-one things, and then I do well in like large groups. So, like I'm also a musician, so I could like perform in front of a bunch of people. But sometimes in like small groups and like parties and small talks, I'm kind of awkward. And I feel like whenever you do couch surfing, there's less opportunity for awkwardness, because it's more of like this one-on-one thing, and you're getting to know people on a smaller scale instead of having to like go into a room full of people and trying to like make friends. So I think it works for shy people. And I've met quite a few shy people through couch surfing that have like said, I'm shy and this and that. But it kind of just works out that way, just the way that it is.
I loved part of some of the stuff that you said. Even if you're not a world travel, you had just some great tidbits for anybody, period. And one of the things I wanted to ask you about is I'm seeing this more and more mainstream and even in big corporations is the idea of mindfulness. Even if you aren't ready to go all the way to crystals and things like that, do you have some tips for people to kind of segue into mindfulness and what that is and how that can adjunct travel?
Sure. So I would say mindfulness or even meditation is just sort of having this awareness of where your mind is instead of letting your thoughts control you, to sort of have that extra layer of like watching the watcher. And so when to take an example, when things don't go your way and you're traveling, it's easy to start to get upset, and then it kind of starts to compound on itself. And then by the end of it, it's like, you're not even upset anymore because of what happened. You're upset just because you've kind of built yourself up to being upset. And then, it could sort of like give you a downward spiral. And I think just acknowledging that and realizing, oh, this is my reaction to the problem is actually the situation and not the problem itself. And so that's like a big part of it. Also, I think that for female travelers, it plays a role in terms of like traveling solo as a female. I met a lot of female solo travelers, and they all sort of had the same message where they were not afraid, but they were street smart, and they paid attention to their surroundings, and obviously like they wouldn't go walk certain streets in the middle of the night, or they wouldn't go to the bar and get wasted alone and stuff like that. But they weren't going out in fear. And I think a lot of the thing, if you read like the law of attraction type of thing, or what I call it is like your thoughts are broadcast transmissions. And so if you walk around with like a positive attitude, you're telepathically beaming that out of yourself. And if you walk around in fear, you're telepathically beaming that out. And so people that are like, crime, the lower element of people that want to take advantage, they're taking advantage of people. A lot of times, like subconsciously, they're reading that fear. And so, you just have to, the mindfulness element is like recognizing that and like, well, maybe I shouldn't go here. Like, it's not to say that you're blocking your intuition. Like if your intuition is telling you to not go somewhere, then you should follow your intuition. But just acknowledging, is this intuition coming from, this being unsafe, or is it just because I'm a generally scared person? And so it's sort of just, the mindfulness is just generally, watching the watcher and being aware of your thoughts and kind of adding another layer of awareness on top of your thinking.
I do see that there are many more female travelers, in particular solo travelers, than men. I've asked around. I don't think there really is an explanation as to why. Like, I mean, Lori, you see there's more when you go out. There's way more solo women travelers than men.
Well, I thought Russell had brought up an interesting point in his book that that women tend to have a stronger intuition, and that served them well in those situations if they trusted their intuition. And I wonder, does that have anything to do with it? Do women feel more comfortable sometimes, which it is kind of counterintuitive to what you think about solo travel. You would think that there would be more men, but again, we see more women as solo travelers.
Sometimes I think guys they want to be with the guys. And so they're, guys don't want to ever feel vulnerable, and so when you're traveling solo, there's like a vulnerability element to it. And I think a lot of guys are, they want to be with their guy friends and they want to just like be with the guys. And so maybe it's harder for them to do that because of that, maybe.
So I have a question about, like, along the way in your book, you talk about you make all of these great relationships along, meet all of these friends. Do you ever get attached along the way, and how do you deal with that? Because part of the experience is kind of immersing yourself in cultures and really connecting. And then once you make that connection, that deep connection, especially that you talk about being mindfulness and kind of spiritually connecting with people on a real level, how do you kind of deal with that? Because you're basically a nomad.
Yeah, I mean, there can be some moments with that. Like, for example, the first time that really hit me was in Vietnam. I went and like met these the people that I stayed with, and were just so friendly and genuine. We really hit it off. And then at the end came, and it was like really sad. I like even wrote a little poem about it, of just like the gravity of like leaving that situation, of like, now I got to go do it all over again, you know, like leaving these guys behind. I think on the positive side is that we have these social networks now, and, you know, I still keep up with them on Facebook, and, you know, we'll do personal chats, and I'm always invited back anytime, and they're always invited here. So I think nowadays it's a little bit easier to keep in touch, but it is hard to move on. And even like romantic connections too, it's kind of the same thing where, you know, what do you do? You know, it's like sometimes that fire ignites, and then you just have to disconnect it and move on. And it's kind of the nature of it. And I think that, like, you know, there's something to be said for non-attachment in general. I mean, I'm getting kind of Buddhist here, but, you know, everything in life is something that we're eventually going to need to detach from. So I guess in some ways it's kind of healthy to go through those processes and like kind of feel that and learn that and deal with it. And, you know, and then also find the balance of like not just cutting it off and suppressing the feelings, but kind of, you know, working through it and stuff. So it is a touchy and tricky subject, but, you know, it's just all part of the package, I guess.
Oh, speaking about detaching, when it comes to physical things, you actually had talked about long-term travel was a great way to declutter. And that's been a huge movement with like KonMari, and that, you know, went up to the KonMari method was, you know, #1 on the New York Times bestseller. How do you use long-term travel to declutter, and how does that work?
Yeah, well, so first of all, you know, when you're doing long-term travel, obviously you're carrying everything with you. So, you know, you can't carry everything with you. So, you know, you have to be really decisive about what you need and what you don't need. And usually, you know, even in my case, like I took more than I needed, and then eventually just started like giving stuff away. It's like, I haven't used this in a while and I don't foresee myself using it. I would just start giving the things away. And then, like I said, I left a lot of my stuff back in Austin in a friend's garage for like the full year. And then when I came back, you know, I was, by then I had it down, you know, where it was like I had my backpack, and even in that book, I listed specifically all the items I took, and it's not a very big list. But when I got back to Austin, you know, I had all this other stuff, and it did feel good to like come back to some of it, you know, but then also a lot of it, I was just like, I just don't need this even more now. And by being away from it so long, it was easier for me to separate from it, because a lot of times people just start throwing junk in their garage and it just stacks up, but then never physically separating from it. It's like always a garage away, you know, and might need that. And then, you know, you live away from it for a year and then come back and it's like, I really don't need this. And then you can give it away. So leaving is one element to declutter. And then when you get back and make that realization that the other stuff you don't need also helps as well.
I'm ready to go around the world just for that concept right there, just to help me get rid of stuff.
It's liberating. Your stuff owns you more than you own your stuff, you'll find.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
One of the things that I find, and I've talked to Lori about this before, that what men travelers always bring up the idea or the reality of finding love on their travel tales. Women tend not to speak so much in their journals, and they don't document that, aside from like long-term books, right? Like Eat, Pray, Love, then that stuff comes up. But like in daily, if you follow some travel bloggers, most women don't talk about like finding or just, you know, sporadic romances while they travel. They might talk about some long-term things that they have. But men always tend to bring that up, and I find that fascinating. But also an important kind of factor, and what comes along with that is like warnings of use protection and all of those things. But why did you? Why? I mean, I guess that was a part of your travel journal.
Yeah. Well, first of all, to speak to the male-female dynamic, I think that, you know, obviously in our culture, it's just a natural thing of evolution where men are more proud about like being with women, and, you know, because that's like a male thing, you know, spread the seed or whatever, and females are, you know, obviously protecting the egg, you know, from the best suitors. So it's natural for women to not want to like broadcast that sort of thing. And I do know there's a lot of like promiscuity, you know, in the couch surfing community, and in you know, in that kind of travel thing, you know, love on the run. no attachments, people, they just want to have fun and move on, and that's out there. I didn't spend a lot of time doing that as far as like making that like a priority. I did have a couple of connections or whatever, but it wasn't something. I saw there's one guy out there that wrote a book like Around the World in 80 Girls or something like that, and it can sort of get out of hand with that thing. But I think it's kind of becomes empty after a while of doing that sort of stuff. So I think finding the deeper connection is a lot more valuable. And I think when you come back to the U.S., who are you gonna open up a Facebook chat with in the end? People that you become. I think friendship's a lot more important than just having sex with a bunch of people around the world. And so, but I guess that's up to interpretation. I read articles all the time about guys that are just like, I just read one the other day about these English guys coming to the U.S. and just going to every city and trying to get laid as many as possible. And it's just like conquest, but it's I can imagine that would get kind of boring.
It seems like more like a Viking spirit. Like,
right. Yeah. Well, I think it is, it's taking that to the end. And the other thing that I wanted to mention about the male-female dynamic is in places like Asia, it's really different from here. Like, for example, if you go to like Turkey, they're really open about hand holding in public and public affection and kissing. But anywhere in Asia, like Thailand or India, it can be like downright dangerous for women to show public affection in public, like holding hands or hugging and kissing in public. It's like they don't. It's like kind of too far. Like they're suppressing it, but it's something that it's just part of the culture. And like if you're a guy and you're showing public affection to a girl in India, tacitly that's sending the message that girl is promiscuous, and so that kind of puts her in danger for like unscrupulous men. So it's something to be aware of. And then anything about like blogging about that sort of stuff, it's kind of frowned upon, I think, in Asia, and so they just look at that male-female dynamic a lot differently. So it's something to be aware of.
So in our last few minutes, we are going to do kind of play a little game with you. We're going to do rapid fire questions between me and Lori. So right. We have 3 questions each. Do you have 3 questions, Lori? Okay. I got it. And so basically the rule for you, Russell, is to answer the question in a short phrase. So I'm giving you 1 sentence. And it's rapid fire. So I'm going to put a little
okay.
Okay. But there are no trick questions. So you have all the answers. Okay. Ready, set, name your favorite place.
Philippines.
What are your best safety tips? Number 1.
Be aware of your surroundings.
Most unusual food that you've eaten.
Some that I've eaten. Just about anything in Singapore.
What is your most embarrassing or difficult couch surfing moment?
When I was in Singapore and a guy was trying to touch me in the middle of the night.
I hope this one is a different answer. Most memorable experience while traveling.
Most memorable. Sunsets on the beach.
What is the one place you never want to go back to again?
No, I can't answer that. I would be open to going back anywhere for a limited time.
Oh,
just not on that same couch, huh?
Right, yeah.
Oh man, Russell, we'd love to have you back because we want to explore more of your couch surfing stories. We can do couch surfing, a topic on couch surfing alone.
I love that.
We should do that. But thank you guys.
Yes.
Thank you, Russell, and thank you all in our chat for joining us today. We'll do this every week at noon Eastern Time, 9 Pacific Standard Time. It's our Travelscope on Travel Tuesday. Share with your friends, comment. I will replay this on my website, daily-affair. It will also replay on at LoriMacBrown.com. And you can follow us all on social media at Dayvee Sutton, at Lori Mac Brown, and Russell Spin the World ARO is his I guess Twitter, Facebook as well, I think.
Yeah, spintheworldaround.com or on Facebook.
And you can find his book, Spin the World Around. It's on Amazon. You can get it. And like I said, it's very useful, especially if you want to. It's useful on twofold. You can read his story about his year around the world, and also you can. He has great travel tips. Until next time, we will see you again. Bye, guys.
Bye,
guys.
you.
Thanks,
That was
Russell.
awesome.